Welcome to this week's edition of Supply Chain Spotlight. I'm JT Engstrom with FreightWaves. With me is a special guest, Hugh Eckberg, CEO of CRST. CRST is one of the largest privately held truckload carriers in America. It was founded in 1955 and has a proud history throughout the highways of America. Hugh, it's a pleasure to have you with us. I'm looking forward to this discussion, and it's great to see you.
Great to see you too, JT, and thanks for the invite. Wishes could be in person, but we all know we're in a different world today. So one of the highlights of this environment we're in is we're learning to use this technology, and it's making us a lot more effective and efficient. So I wouldn't have guessed it could be this good.
And that's actually an interesting point. I know you guys are undergoing a full technological innovation and really stepping up your game, which we'll talk about. But first, I was wondering if maybe for the listeners or viewers of this discussion, if you could give us a little bit of a background as to the history of CRST, the business as it evolved, the multifaceted nature as it is today, which I think is a lot more diversified than many appreciate. And I think that'd be a good way to give us some context for the various things that you see to set us up for the discussion of where we are today, how we move into the future, what are the core trends, and what are the market dynamics presently.
Sure, JT, thanks. And as you know, I can give you a good history of CRST. I'm a pretty short part of that history, as I'll be 4 years this September, and hadn't been in trucking before that. But as you mentioned, CRST founded in 1955, one of those great American stories. Our founder, Harold Smith, Smitty, founded the company because of the job he had with a Chicago-based trucking company. He no longer had that job, had some young kids and a new mortgage, knew that Miriam wasn't going to move for him to find a job, so they literally bought a chicken coop, a folding table, a couple folding chairs, and a phone, and started this business. And this was obviously before deregulation, much more controlled environment, but he found a way to, livestock trucks are going to Chicago, coming back empty. He figured out a way to haul back some specialty steel to make a link belt cranes. Link belt cranes are manufactured here, and that's how CRST got started in 1955. He ultimately bought his first truck, and now we've got about 6,000 trucks running across America's roadways, doing the great work that keeps this economy going. Grown heavily through acquisition. So as I'm sure we'll talk about, we have a very, very diverse service capability. And it started out, each of those ran very independently. They were all very strong, very profitable companies. And as I came on board and saw this, and actually had a few comments from customers, how we had all these abilities, yet they didn't find it easy to do work with us because we operated so independently. We've been working very hard over the last year and a half to realize we've got this great transportation solution, great diverse business model, can do a lot for our customers. And when we bring it together as one company and provide a higher level of service to customers as one provider through CRST, our customers are appreciating that value a lot more.
That's a phenomenal overview, and I chuckle a little bit internally when you say you've been there for 4 years. It's a short part of the history, and there's kind of two components to that. One is it's a company that does have such a rich and long-standing history in our industry, but on the other hand, the 4 years you've been with CRST, you've had a really material impact on the thought process and the philosophy within the organization, which has set the team up really well for flourishing over the next, not just market cycle, but perhaps decade and beyond. And I think that's really interesting. So with that, can you talk to us a little bit about some of the observations you had to your last talking point, around how you could take this multifaceted service offering and have sort of a single point of contact go to market for all of the offerings that CRST has, which is far more than I think some have a full appreciation for, and it really is a very dynamic operating company.
For the group to know, my background primarily in branded manufactured products prior to coming here. So I think there's always a benefit when you come into a business and you don't have maybe a deep knowledge. Obviously, I'd run businesses and run large businesses, so had a strong idea what it took to compete and what it took to win customers. But because I didn't have any of the, myopia maybe of how a business had been run or how the industry runs, I was able to look at it with very broad view. And my predecessor had built a very strong business, had done some great acquisitions, and had built this company that had really strong capabilities. So really strong flatbed business. But those were two different brands. It was Malone and Bessel. Real strong business with our Pegasus brand that does work in automotive and also does work in pharma. And then we had what we call our legacy businesses, which is our expedited business, our dedicated business that really grew out of the expedited business. And then also Malone was part of our flatbed companies. And we did a very nice acquisition out in California, the Gardner business, which is primarily a dedicated business model, and specialized, which is high value products, specialized products, a lot of work in the healthcare industry, a lot of work in the tech industry, but also home delivery. So very broad spectrum. But each of those businesses did operate very independently, very efficient, very strong, but we weren't seeing a lot of organic growth. So as I was brought in, the basic theory was I had a different point of view, had a different level of experience in different industries, I had some success, growing businesses by taking advantage of the strength of the total company. And as I started learning the business, talking to the leaders here, had some great conversations with customers and some of my peers now in the industry, and just realized, and one of our customers said it to us best. They said, "You're one of the biggest carriers in the industry, but we do very little business with you. We really want to do more with you, but we don't want to talk to 4 people. We don't want to talk to 5 different people every time we talk about a different service model." And that was really a big kicker for the whole organization to hear that directly from a customer, and really accelerated the movement to realize it wasn't about being a really good flatbed operator at Bessel or at Malone or a really good operator within Pegasus. It was this portfolio of services that we have within CRST. And for most of the big shippers out there, most of our big customers, a lot of what we do, they need. And they want to get it through one provider. And they want us to leverage our capabilities to be a more high value provider. So that's kind of the transition we've been on for the last, probably I'll call it 18 months. You were out here with me. It was probably right before we did the roadshow and kicked off that new strategic focus for the business, making people understand that we've got this great company and it's got great, strong operating capabilities. And now as we turn those operating capabilities and make it much more market and customer focused to show customers the total value of the CRST portfolio, we're really excited about the opportunities we think that provides for us and, more importantly, for our customers.
Absolutely, and I think that overview is really wonderfully articulated, and within that, so you outline the different market exposures of flat, expedited, specialized, final mile, you also have brokerage. It gives you guys a really good perspective on what's going on in transportation fairly holistically across all the United States of America. And so I think what's interesting to talk about and get a perspective from you is, you've seen, despite the fact that it's only been a couple of years at CRST, you have seen, a trough 17, which rapidly spiked through the summer. You've seen an interesting 18. You've seen a challenging 19, and you've now seen 2020, which is, trailing 6 months, unlike anything anyone has seen. What are your thoughts on what's going on right now from a transportation perspective across each of these different markets? What are the kind of different fundamental and market-driven trends that you're seeing?
In all honesty, and this, the industry, the trends are kind of tough to see right now, right? This, because of what's going on with the impact of COVID, it's obviously created a huge economic impact and a market impact. But it does require all of us in the industry to sharpen our focus and really understand what's happening. As you know, we did another acquisition in February, purchased NAL Group, which is a home delivery, complex home installation business, and that business has been. It was a very fortuitous time to do an acquisition. A couple weeks after the acquisition, I thought I should probably update my resume in that we bought a company right before the COVID impact hit. But being in that space right now and seeing how many, many more consumers realize they can shop from home and live from home and take advantage of the home delivery, that business is doing very well for us. And it's a great business model. We're thrilled to have brought that in. But what's also nice is we can build more capability in that business through our what we call our middle mile network within our traditional specialized business to build that into a stronger portfolio. We're clearly seeing some strength continuing in dedicated, and that's been a very strong marketplace for everybody in the industry. And we're having some very good success there. But I think a lot of customers over the last few years, they've seen the volatility in the transportation space, and they're understanding that the dedicated solution can be a great solution only for the right application. Also, ATRI just put out the report that everyone saw on the impact of these nuclear verdicts. I think a lot of people that have private fleets also realize there's a risk profile that a professional trucking company is better equipped to manage probably than a private fleet player. And so we see that creating more opportunities in dedicated as well. The reality is, regardless what happens in this marketplace, things are going to move on trucks. You can't outsource it. And I think overall, JT, what we're really focused on is understanding our customers as closely as we can, and how do we bring value to them? What is it in their business model that's important? Is it flexible capacity? Is it a very unique engineered dedicated solution? Is it this home delivery model? And that's what we love about our business, is we can have that conversation with customers, and there's really almost nothing that we can't do. I'm just not a big intermodal player, but with our integrated solutions business, our logistics business, we have the capability to bring in those capabilities as well. And so what we're seeing is the supply chain, the market is definitely volatile right now. And what we definitely hope is that the strong players in the market can bring some reliability and consistency to our customers to help make transportation a more important part of that business model, and win those positions and grow with those customers.
Reading the tea leaves in the transportation space right now can be as much of an art as it is a science. Understanding, where various data sources come from, and what they do and don't reflect. And when the market turns upside down as much as it has, analysts, such as myself, or at least in a previous life, start questioning all fundamental assumptions, right? And so, it seems as if we've seen, certainly here, at least through our data feeds, we've seen a lot of volatility in van and reefer tender activity over the last, call it 4 months, with 2 peaks and a trough. We've seen basically a full cycle and a half in 4 months, which is incredibly anomalous. And on top of that, we also noted that there's a somewhat of an energy crisis going on, or at least a step back in the industrials market on the back of some activity in the energy space. And so it sounds like, consistent with sort of what we're seeing in the data, you've seen, relative strength amongst, you mentioned your final mile segment, which makes a ton of sense. People are sitting at home, they want to order goods, being able to deliver direct to home. It's kind of humorous that you mentioned polishing off your resume, but it sounds like that's, your timing couldn't have been better, which is fortuitous. And in the dedicated division, that makes a lot of sense that you guys are seeing, fairly positive, secular trends right now. I wonder, I would anticipate in the brokerage division, you're still seeing, fairly positive volumes, and we're in earnings season right now, so we can see that amongst the public operating companies as well. And so it seemed like those divisions, it makes a ton of sense that you're doing well. Expedited, to me, and the relationship with some of the other end markets, I'm curious as to how you see that market segment, and if there are any tea leaves that we could tease out amongst the flatbed exposed space to get sort of a read through into the industrial economy, and if you think how much the industrial economy has actually been impacted, or whether or not some of the data sets are actually reflective of what you see in the market through, to your point, truckload transactions are the finger into what's actually going on with various elements of GDP. And I think that'd be very interesting, given your ability to see all this kaleidoscope of information, so many different facets of the economy through truckload traffic.
Yeah, well, I think what you brought up, the fact we've had these condensed cycles, and this is unprecedented. That word's overused in this current time and market, but it's true. And I think one of the challenges that we're trying to see through is a lot of the government stimulus is providing some coverage that wouldn't normally be there. And so I think that's both impacting the rate market, because I do think there's a fair amount of, those government stimulus has kept people in play that if that wasn't there, might not be the case. And that's both on the carrier side and on the shipper side. And as those stimuluses run out, the market's going to change. And we don't know exactly what that's going to be, but we think we're going to continue to see this tightening of the market. And the recession is still here. We're going to see growth in 3Q and 4Q over 2Q, but it's not going to be over previous years. So as we look at the marketplace, what we do like, you talked about our expedited business, we're obviously one of the biggest team players out there. It's a tough business model to run, and it's in demand at a certain level. But it's a good place to be because there's not a ton of competition, and it's a hard space to get into, and it's a very high value need. And on the flatbed side, we're definitely seeing that pick up, as you can see in the market trends. It's trailing van right now, in terms of spot rates, but it's starting to pick up. And what we're seeing through our customer base is that's continuing to grow. And we think that's going to continue to hold strong, which is a strong indicator of the industrial market right now. So we're still optimistic that this is going to continue to pull out of the bottom. I'm a believer in the swoosh recovery versus the V or the U. The only fear we all have right now, as everyone's well aware, is there's lots of spikes in the virus. And if there is another industry shutdown, another economic shutdown, it would be very detrimental. My personal belief is it'll be worse than the first one because coffers aren't as full. It would be harder for people to withstand another shutdown like that. Hopefully we're smart enough now to know how to slow the spread and not overwhelm the healthcare system and keep the economy going.
That's great commentary, and that's certainly a great read through to a couple of unique niches. And you certainly mentioned how the expedited market is far more consolidated than the traditional dry van market, and I think that's frequently overlooked. And it's great to hear that commentary on the flatbed space as far as a read through to the industrial economy, which is a big generator of economic activity and freight in the United States of America. So that is a great read. You brought up another very interesting point, which pertained to essentially PPP subsidies for various elements of transportation capacity providers, whether asset-based or asset-light. And it's a phenomenal point that it is propping up certain elements of the capacity space, which as that gets teased away, it'll be interesting to see what the volume and rate market looks like in relation to the reduction of those subsidies and how that balances out in market dynamics.
Yeah, and the challenge is to be, did the government plan it correctly, which means as the subsidies wear out, the economy stays growing so that there's the demand there to keep that supply healthy. But if the demand's not there and those subsidies aren't there, it's it's simple math, unfortunately, of the impact. So because rates are still not where they were, but they're clearly coming up.
We have a few minutes for one, maybe two more questions. I want to ask one question about drivers, then another around your outlook and how technology plays into that. But I want to start first with the drivers, because as you know, the drivers are the backbone of these companies, right? Of trucking companies. And they're absolutely paramount to this whole equation. And we are in a health-related pandemic, and drivers are at the front lines of dealing with interpersonal interactions with customer relationships and also operating services relationships, whether it's through maintenance or fuel stations or dealing with park lot attendants and so on and so forth. How do you think about appropriately taking care of your drivers, making sure they have the resources they need, being available for them, which I think there's a lot of value in that, having your dispatchers be available, and ensuring that at the very least they feel like they have a voice, and if something does happen that you can help them out. I mean, it's just such a unique period of time. How do you think about making sure your drivers are in a position where they can keep running?
And JT, you bring up a point. I want to make sure I take the opportunity to first and foremost say thank you to every driver out there on the road, not just the CRST drivers, but all drivers, because they are doing a truly essential task and they're on the front lines, and they're doing things a lot of people are choosing not to, and we all just owe them a ton of gratitude. So really appreciate you bringing that up. And secondly, we're working very hard to do everything we can, and we're making sure at all of our terminals, so anytime one of our drivers shows up at one of our terminals, at one of our shops, we've stocked all of them with the supplies they need for keeping their truck clean and safe. So we provide those. We've also been providing our drivers, just some additional support to ensure that they can buy what they need to keep their truck well prepared and clean in these environments, and keeping themselves clean as well. So we're providing the extra support to make sure we're doing that. But you're right, this situation just emphasizes to all of us in this industry, they need to just take care of our drivers and realize that they are the heart blood of this business. They're the ones that interact directly with our customers. And to our leadership team's credit, we're improving and overhauling our driver communication, obviously investing in technology now so we can give them better support. But overall, we're just doing a better job to make sure we communicate with them and support them.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. And I think to touch on that final point, so as we encapsulate this whole conversation, so you've got a multifaceted offering. You're seeking to improve your single point of contact go-to-market. In addition to that, the backbone of your and any trucking company really is the drivers, and we're dealing with a large health pandemic, and interrelated to being able to give them all of the resources that you would intrinsically want to be able to is also can be supplemented through some technological enablers. And furthermore, being able to cross-sell the entire organization to shippers who perhaps might have only used one business unit can conceptually also become a technology. Technology can also help enable those to become more efficient. Can you talk to me a little bit? Can you talk with me a little bit about how you think about leveraging technology through incrementally improving various elements of your go-to-market and capacity provisioning, sustainability, i.e., managing your drivers?
I think an important part of this, there's a lot of buzz out there about automated vehicles, and it'll probably happen. It may happen, but again, you and I have had this conversation. What really is going to drive this industry from a technology standpoint is data. It is understanding what happens in the markets and the networks, and it's that information and knowledge that ultimately is going to help the trucking companies both be a better service provider to their customers, and equally as importantly, better support the drivers. The thing about this industry is, we all know it, utilization is such a huge driver between the success of a business, the success of a driver, but it's also a key indicator of how well you serve your customers. As long as you've got that truck rolling under load, the driver's in the best spot, the company's in its best spot, and when that load is picked up on time and delivered on time, and then as quickly thereafter there's another load to pick up and deliver, that's going to help you take care of your customers as well. So we're very focused on understanding how do you aggregate as much information, as much data as possible, and turn that into knowledge. Create insight, create knowledge, so that you can drive better decision making to drive utilization. And there's obviously players in this industry that have made huge investments, and they're showing great results from it. They're doing really great things, and there's many, like CRST, not far behind them, making those deep investments, because realizing that technology it's not about automated trucks. It's about providing information and better decision making by turning that data into insight and knowledge.
Well, with that, Hugh, we're out of time, but this has been a pleasure and a lot of fun. Thank you very much for joining us. Please do join us again. I will definitely invite you back. Hopefully you will accept. And so, I hope you have a wonderful day. It looks like the weather's beautiful behind you. I hope you get some time outside of the office. And, so with that, Hugh Eckberg, CEO of CRST, the gold standard. Thank you for joining us. I'm JT Engstrom. This is your weekly edition of Supply Chain Spotlight.